these are all connected. Okay. Y noticia muy importante aquí para español, para interpretación en español, por favor pueden marcar el número que ven en el chat. Es el 415-854-8706. Disculpen, George, I think we have a little bit of a technical issue. I'm trying to record the meeting and it's not letting me. I wonder if you could record it on your end. Sorry, could you just record it so we have it?
Yes, it's recording now.
Oh, it's recording. Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, so again, thank you to everyone joining us. So again, we got Catherine and Elena, who's hopefully going to be here very shortly, and Alfredo, Jorge, myself. We also have our interpreter. Thank you. Abel, are you there? Yes, okay, wonderful. For sign language, we have pro bono interpreters. Thank you so much for being here with us. And so I will be taking notes. And yeah, so welcome everybody. We hope to have a discussion, and we hope to especially learn a lot from our experts who are kind enough to join us on the call, Mr. Jorge Rivera and Elena Pop. So those are just basically what our meeting is about. So now we are going to hear from Catherine. So she's wants to briefly, before we go into introductions, our subject. So Catherine is going to talk about our community agreements and how we can contribute positively in this conversation.
George is going to step in, and then we will go from there.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. My name is Jorge Rivera. I am the Southern California Regional Coordinator for Tenants Together. Tenants Together is a statewide organization that advocates and fights for tenants' rights. And my job is to help organizations and community groups like the Downey Tenants Union and apparently the Paramount Tenants Union build their power and their capacity. And I've been fortunate enough to help Kathy in some instances to organize some of her buildings in Downey, and really honored to be here to chat with you all. I am going to go ahead and share my screen in a little bit to use a PowerPoint presentation to help guide the conversation. But before I do, I just want to give another reminder. Les quiero recordar que si requieren interpretación en español, por favor marquen al número área 415-854-8706. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I guess while I'm doing that, I can just tell you, I've been organizing tenants for the last 8 years, and I started organizing in the city of Long Beach, and I helped found LIBRE, which stands for Long Beach Residents Empowered, and then I've been with Tenants Together for about a year and a half now. So I want to start by saying that Elena is a lot more of an expert on the ordinances for the city and the county of Los Angeles than I am. And so I'm going to go ahead and just try to cover as much as I possibly can. And hopefully Elena will be able to hop on and help support. So we're going to start off with some community agreements. And I want to invite you to just ask any clarifying questions. Sometimes we get used to talking in certain way that organizers talk, and it may not make sense to everybody. So, or maybe I'm talking about a law that it was passed and you don't understand it. So feel free to ask questions. There aren't aren't any bad questions. Also just want to remind everyone to just have their video and their audio on mute while we're having the presentation. And together we know a lot. This means that we invite you to share any thoughts or ideas or experiences that you might have, because it helps us all learn together. And we want to invite you to give positive feedback and not negative feedback. And we usually say this in the phrase, throw glitter, not shade. So I will move on to the next slide. And just a really quick check-in. Is everybody seeing the slides okay? A thumbs up if you are. Yeah, okay, good. So the agenda, we're just gonna talk a little bit about what your rights are under the COVID-19 protections in both the city and the county of LA. We might talk a little bit about some resources, and maybe I'll talk a little bit about a couple of things that are happening right now that you might want to get involved with that helps keep you protected. And then we'll have some time throughout the presentation for any questions and answers. And then we can, if we have time afterward, we can have next steps. So a lot of the questions that we get are like, what rights do I have in LA County, because you're Downey Tenants Union or Paramount, right? Not necessarily LA City, but it's like, what rights do I have under LA County? And or what rights do I have as a subsidized tenant? And a subsidized tenant is a tenant that is receiving assistance by some government agency to pay their rent. Also, it's like what have we heard? What is going on? What laws are happening? What moves are politicians making? All of these things. And then of course, there's in our communities, there's a lot of concern around immigration status and how that might affect your rights as a tenant. And the simple answer to that is it doesn't. Your rights as a tenant are the same rights anybody else has, regardless of what your status is. That's first and foremost, right? So the property owners have to abide by all the same laws that that anybody else has to abide by, whether you have documentation or you don't. So let's start with the California and the governor's order. The governor had an emergency executive order, and he gave it in March 16th. And as of right now, it's been extended all the way to the end of September. The order that the governor gave didn't really offer tenants any protections whatsoever. All it did, it gave the cities within the state permission to pass their own laws. And the funny thing about that is that the cities were already able to do that. They didn't have to wait for the governor to give them permission. So we were really upset that the governor did not pass anything stronger when they had the opportunity. And so that's just important to know, because a lot of people think that the governor passed an eviction moratorium, and that is just not true. That is not the case. What's keeping us from being evicted is the Judicial Council rule, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Now, LA County also passed its own emergency eviction protections on March 4th. And we've been fighting to make sure that it gets extended more so. And finally, they recently were able to vote to have it extended all the way until the end of September, so that it's the same timeline as the governor's order. The LA County, we're going to go into detail about the details of the county ordinance, and then you can see that it's a lot stronger than a lot of the city's ordinances. And because Los Angeles doesn't really pertain to you as a city, as a community, you can we'll just gloss over that. Now, as I mentioned, the rule that is protecting people from being evicted right now and is much stronger than anything that has been passed is I'm sorry. Oh, is the California Judicial Council Rule 1. And that was passed by Judicial Council is a body of judges, and what they do is they oversee all of the courts in the state of California. So they're not a government agency, so they don't make laws, they don't pass laws. All they do is interpret the law. But this agency, it does tell the courts what they should and shouldn't do and how they should and shouldn't do it. And so the Judicial Council on April 6th, they basically told the courts that they cannot process any eviction paperwork so that then tenants cannot get evicted. So right now, a property owner can go to court and can file a complaint against a tenant so that they can be evicted, but that is as far as it goes. The courts will not process all of the paperwork that's necessary to get the tenant to go to court. And if the tenant doesn't go to court, then the tenant can't lose. If the tenant can't lose, then the sheriff is not notified. And if the sheriff is not notified, the tenant cannot be locked out. So basically, there can be no evictions through the court systems because this rule is in place. The original rule said that it's going to remain in place until 90 days after the state of emergency ends. So the California governor put the state in a state of emergency. And until the governor lifts that state of emergency, this Judicial Council Rule 1 was supposed to stay in place. Now, what's happening right now is that the landlord associations and the realtor associations, they filed a lawsuit against the Judicial Council. And so now the Judicial Council is really scared, and in the last week, they threatened to pull back Rule 1 on August 14th. They threatened to pull back Rule 1 a month ago, but then the entire state and the community started sending phone calls, started sending emails, started writing letters, and then the Judicial Council is not used to that kind of action, and so they kept it in place. But then the real estate and the landlord lobby filed the lawsuit, and now they're super scared. And so they're threatening to take back Rule 1 in hopes that the governor or the politicians do something to help protect tenants. So that's kind of where we're at with those laws. Oh, let me see, I went too fast. So as I said, the state of the California, the governor, it's not a moratorium of rents. All it is a simple delay in evictions due to non-payment of rent, right? It does not provide rent forgiveness. So that means that all rents will eventually need to be paid back. And all it does is allow cities to draft their own emergency ordinance. So the Judicial Council ruling, as I mentioned, it prevents new evictions and foreclosures from actually proceeding in the courts. The only exception to the rule is that if a tenant is a nuisance and is endangering public health and safety. So that's the only way that somebody can legally evict somebody from their unit. As I mentioned, it's supposed to last 90 days after the state of emergency, and it provides for other delays until the court proceedings can actually happen safely. And it also protects foreclosure of homes for homeowners. So why this rule is so important is because it gives the power to the court over the tenant. Without a summons, there is no judgment, and without a judgment, the tenant cannot be evicted. So the sheriff does not get involved. And so it's really important that if you get a court summons, that you do not answer that court summons, because if you get a court summons and you answer it, then you're giving the court permission to actually proceed with your case. So right now, if for whatever reason you get a summons or something that looks like a summons, you don't necessarily have to answer it. Recommend that you talk to an attorney first. And just generally speaking right now, do not move out, do not sign anything, and do not agree to a payment plan unless you talk to an attorney or somebody that can counsel you on those things.
Hi.
Yes. Do we have any questions so far?
Hey, Jorge, this is Carlos.
Yes.
A couple of questions, but I'll probably just stick to one. The nuisance and endangering public safety, that's kind of subjective, right? I mean, can a landlord use that under the guise of them trying to evict somebody? Or is it happening already?
Yes, they have to prove to the court that the tenant is actually endangering public health and safety. So we have seen cases where the attorney claims nuisance and claims that they're a threat to public health and safety, but by the time they get to court, the judge will throw it out because they have to prove that they are. They can't just say that they are. So by me, like if I'm a property owner and I want to get a tenant out, I can say that they're a nuisance, and that will help the court process the paperwork. But once I get to court, then they have to prove, I have to prove that they're a nuisance. If I can't prove that, then they're just going to throw it out of court. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. And one last thing, are landlords, so if a landlord takes it upon themselves to change the locks, are they in violation of some law? Or is that happening too?
That is happening, and it's happening a lot. So that we had a whole training on this because it's a lot of legal information, but the only legal way that a landlord can evict a tenant is through the courts. Any other way is considered an illegal eviction. So there's no way that a landlord has the right to change the locks, has the right to take the tenant stuff out of their home. If they do, then they can be subject to criminal penalties, as well as the tenant can sue for damages. It doesn't help the tenant situation as far as living, but there are penalties that can be imposed on the landlord for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have one question. So does having a positive COVID-19 test, does that count under like nuisance? Because like I've heard, of people being threatened to be evicted if they find out they have COVID, but I don't know if they're legally required to tell their landlord, or can they just isolate themselves in the apartment without telling the landlord?
Yes, they can isolate themselves in the apartment. There is no requirement for them to tell the landlord that they are self-quarantining, because they have COVID or COVID-like symptoms.
Okay.
They cannot be evicted because of that, because
Okay.
their eviction is actually a threat to public health and safety. Not
Yeah.
not them being quarantined. Being quarantined is the suggested measure of action for people that have COVID.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that should not be an evictable reason.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna move on. There'll be more room for questions as we move on. So this is a map of unincorporated, or actually all of Los Angeles County. The orange parts are parts of the county that are considered unincorporated, and the white parts are the parts that have cities that have already incorporated. The county ordinance right now, it applies to all of the orange unincorporated parts, and it applies to any city that does not already have an eviction protection. So if you have a really bad ordinance, like I believe the city of Downey does, then the city of Downey is exempt from falling under the county ordinance that is much, much stronger, right? So in some cities, it's probably better that they don't have any protections and let the county protect them than have a really bad one, right? And as I understand it, the city of Downey has a really bad one, and it's not as strong as the county ordinance. So that's just something to think about when you're thinking about talking to like your city officials, and either having them make it stronger or just letting them take it away so that you are protected by the county. Okay. As I mentioned, so this is the county ordinance. It protects against residential and commercial evictions for failure to pay rent due to COVID impacts, right? And for no fault reasons. So if you're not paying rent because you can't pay rent because you lost your job, you lost income, your family member is sick and you have to take care of them, your kids are at home and you can't go to work, then these are all impacts of COVID, and they're valid reasons to not pay rent. And all the rent that you have not paid, the county ordinance says that it's not due until 12 months after the emergency ordinance is lifted. We're still in a state of emergency now. So even if they lifted it tomorrow, you still don't have to pay your past rent for 12 months after tomorrow. But there's no way that they're going to lift the state of emergency tomorrow. They may not even lift it next month. They may not even lift it this year. So this gives you a lot more time.
Si ese jugo no es tuyo, tíralo.
I think we need to,
Pueden, thank you.
yeah, and so it gives you a lot more time to pay back rent. The only thing that you have to do with the county ordinance is you have to inform the landlord that you cannot pay rent within 7 days of the payment. So you can pay before, you can tell them before or right after, but it has to be within 7 days. And they've also frozen the rents, and they've backdated it all the way to March 4th, which means that the landlord can't raise your rent during this period of time, right? And allows the county ordinance allows for what's called self-certification of a COVID-19 impact. A lot of the cities, they passed protections, but they required the tenant to prove to the landlord that they were financially impacted. And some of the ordinances would say that you have to show bank statements or pay stubs or a medical doctor's note or something like that. You had to prove it. The county ordinance says you yourself can just tell them that you are financially impacted, and that's all you need to do. You don't have to show proof of it. You're self-certifying, right? And so this makes the county ordinance really attractive and a lot better than many of the ordinances passed at the city level. So the responsibility of demonstrating the impossibility of paying the rent provided by a landlord, and these are examples of financial impacts, right? You can show that you've been terminated from your job. You can show the last pay stub. You can show your bank statements that don't have any money in it. You can show all the medical bills that you might have because you've been ill, or you can get a letter signed by your employer or your manager stating that you're out of work or you've lost income. These are all valid reasons of showing financial impact if you wanted to show financial impact. And so what are some financial impacts? Sort of like the things that I already said. You've been diagnosed, you got laid off, or you lost work hours, or you have to comply with the county health order that says you got to stay home and quarantine, or you just need to care for your kids that are out of school. So the LA County protections, as I mentioned, it applies to all 88 cities and unincorporated unless there's already an emergency ordinance in place. And during this period, if you are covered by the county ordinance, there are no charges for late or unpaid rent. So the landlord can't charge you an extra $50 because you didn't pay your rent on time. And some of the eviction protections include failure to pay rent. If there's no fault of your own, meaning that Ellis law means that you live in a rent-controlled apartment, which you all don't, but they want to remove the apartments from the market and turn them into condos or parking lot or something like that, right? But I don't think you all have to worry about that because it doesn't. I don't believe you all have rent control. Another no-fault reason is that the owner wants to move in to the unit, or there's a court order saying that you have to move out of the unit for whatever reason. Maybe the building is about to fall down and they want you out. You cannot be evicted for unauthorized occupants, meaning that if you had a family that got kicked out or got evicted, friends of your family, and they had to come and stay with you. So a lot of the leases and the contracts say that if you have an unauthorized person, then that is violating the contract, and that is a reason for them to evict you. Not right now under the county ordinance. The county ordinance says you can have unauthorized occupants in your home, and you can also have unauthorized pets in your home, and that is not a reason to be evicted. And also for the nuisances, right? They have to prove that you're a nuisance, not just say that you're a nuisance and get you out like before. So it prohibits landlords and those acting on the behalf of landlords from harassing and intimidating tenants. At least that's what it's supposed to do. Whether or not the landlords actually do that, that's a different story. I use the example only because the freeway says you have to drive 65, doesn't mean that everybody's going to obey that law, right? And only because landlords are not supposed to harass and intimidate tenants does not mean that they're going to obey that law, right? And that's exactly what we see with a lot of these illegal evictions that are happening in our communities, where the landlord cannot legally evict them, but they will do everything that they can to intimidate, harass, threaten, and scare the tenant out of their home, right? And once the tenant moves out or gets their things out, they lose all their rights, which is why we tell people, do not move right now. Do not move unless you absolutely have to. So we just want to pause real quick to see if there are any other questions.
So I have a I guess just a clarifying question, Jorge. Could you go back to your previous slide? Yeah, so just so that everyone's clear on this. So are you saying that if your city, if people's cities have an emergency ordinance in place, then these protections that you that we see here on the slide and in the previous slide, they don't apply?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So I understand Downey has an emergency ordinance, right?
Yes.
Right. And how good is their ordinance, in your opinion? Not very good. It's not this good, right? It's not as good as the county ordinance, but because they have one, it doesn't matter how good it is, because they have one, the county ordinance does not apply. However, the county supervisors are going to be meeting in a couple of weeks or in the next week, and they're going to be voting to make the county ordinance the floor. What this means is that if it passes, it doesn't matter if the cities already have an emergency ordinance. If the county ordinance is stronger than the city ordinance, then the county ordinance applies, right? But the people that pass the county ordinance are your county supervisors, right? So these are the folks that you all need to call, and you need to demand that they pass this, and that they make the county ordinance the floor. They make it the base, right? Because if that happens, it doesn't matter that you have a cheapy ordinance in Downey, the county ordinance is stronger, and that's the one that's going to apply, right? So as a community, you can talk to your city council and try to get them to make it stronger. And if they don't want to, then you can go and talk to the county supervisors and say, you need to help protect me by making the county ordinance the floor. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So then we could have, so that we would both want to probably, make it the floor so that it applies in every city, and probably even, strengthen it, right? Is that a constant that you would suggest right now?
Yeah.
So, George, there's a question in here. Is there any indication of how the vote will go? What are the biggest odds?
We don't know. We're, as a community, we're part of a coalition called the Healthy L.A. Coalition. And you all at the Paramount Tenant Union, Downey Tenant Union can be a part of that coalition to listen in on those calls and to find out what it is that you can do. I can have somebody invite you onto those calls so that you can hear where they're at. But we're all working every angle that we possibly can, because we know if the county supervisors makes this the floor, then it's going to help hundreds of thousands of people. Right, so, okay. All right, yes.
Can I ask you something that maybe we're going back to a little bit of before, but then the paying the rent question, that we have to notice the landlord within the 7 days that we cannot pay the rent, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is that, for example, if I noticed the landlord last month, and this month, should I notice them again? Like each month, should I do it, or?
Good question. Yes, I recommend that you give them notice every month that you cannot pay. And the recommendation is that you put this notice in writing and you send it via certified mail. Okay. Certified mail is about $3.40. Do not request a signature. Do not request a signature. It's only certified mail. Now, if you need help writing the letter and sending the letter, you can go to the website norent.org. norent.org. And I know that there's a version in Spanish, but I don't remember what the website address is there. But if you go to that website, you type in your information, it will automatically generate a letter and it will send it to your property owner's address on your behalf.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much.
Okay. This is LA City. It doesn't pertain to you, so I'm just going to skip over all of this here. These are some information that you can call and find out more information at the county. You can always go to the county website at lacountyhelpcenter.org, and you can also email about the county ordinance. And we ask that you try to contact your county supervisor in order to urge them to make sure that the county ordinance applies to all cities, no matter how weak the ordinance is. Christian, you have a question?
Hi, yes. I need some help with the Spanish line. I'm trying to get my mom to hop in the meeting, but every time we call, because I tested it out myself, all I hear is children.
Okay. It might be a lot of background noise, somebody that's on the call. I
Yeah,
think that
Okay,
Abel
we
is,
actually,
yeah.
go ahead, sorry.
Yeah,
I would
Abel,
try.
yeah, Abel is in the line, but he seems to hear the same thing.
Yeah, I don't hear anyone, just children.
Oh, wow. How can we do this, George?
I
Sorry to
think
interrupt the
that
meeting, I just,
that's okay. I think the way to mute themselves on the conference call line is *6
Star
or
6?
*7. So Abel, you can ask them to press *6 and see if that helps mute them so that you're not getting all the background noise.
I'll try that, thank you.
Okay. All right. More questions? Okay, so other things that we want you to know about that are happening. So there are two bills, many things that are happening politically and legislatively, but the one that's really important that everyone is supporting, that we're supporting, is AB 1386. AB stands for Assembly Bill. So this is your state assembly people, and the state assembly member Chu is trying to pass this bill, which would basically, for the entire state of California, it will defer the payment of rent for 12 months, meaning that you don't have to pay it for 12 months. And the rent that you owe cannot be a reason for eviction. So let's say you haven't been paying rent since March, and this COVID goes all the way to December. Is like you will have 12 months to pay all that back rent, and the landlord cannot use the fact that you haven't paid that rent as a reason for eviction. And at the same time, that won't be able to damage your credit. So they can't try to report you to the credit agencies saying that you are late on payments, right? So that is AB 36. Elena, you made it. So how are you? I'm gonna
You're doing a great job. Go on, I'm listening.
I'm renaming you because you look like Jorge. Okay.
Oh, I came on as Jorge?
Yeah. So I know that there were some recent amendments to AB 1436, but I'm not really familiar with those amendments. Maybe you can help fill in there.
So we did get these were orphan ideas we were still trying to get into the bill. We did get that the owner has to prove. So under AB 1336, the owner is not supposed to file in eviction court. They're supposed to file in regular court. If they decide to file in eviction court, then the burden of proof to prove that it's not COVID-19 related is on them instead of on the tenant having to prove that it is COVID-19 related. So that helps. But we haven't been able to get any of the others. But it's still a good bill in that it will protect a lot of people and it will stop all these eviction filings. We will not have 365,000 evictions to contend with.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. And I know that there are other bills. I know there was something that was just recently introduced in response to the possible judicial rule 1 being taken back. It was 828.
So that's that. AB 828 was a very bad bill that nobody liked. The landlords hated it and we hated it. And the author, we are told, is trying to rewrite it so that it addresses the Judicial Council rule. But we haven't seen it in writing. And so that is one possibility for saving Judicial Council Rule 1, was replacing it with that. But we need to see it in writing and we still don't have that.
Okay. Well, and so there's this other bill, SB 1410, and what this does, if it passes, is let's say that you owe rent from March to December, and instead of having to pay that back yourself to the landlord, the state is going to buy that rent debt with giving the landlord tax credits, right? So that they can report that on their taxes. And then the tenant, you have 10 years to pay back what the state just bought from you, which was your rent and debt. And this is a voluntary program, is that correct?
It's still so the landlord can say no. So that's one of the problems we have with it. If the landlord can say no, then what good is it?
Right.
And the other problem we have with it is the tenant protections are not as strong. Under AB 1436, very strong eviction protections, not so strong under AB 1410. And the third problem we have is that it's expensive because the state is buying the debt. So then that affects other things. But if frankly, I think that if it were not voluntary, if the landlords were obligated to do it, then it would be fine. And I think if both bills passed, it would be fine. The danger with 1410 is that the senators are saying, oh, but we have 1410, we don't need 1436. So we need 1436. It's a stronger bill.
Yeah. And can you report back on where the county supervisors are with making the county ordinance the floor?
Yes. So for 3 months, they have been telling county council to give them a report on what the legalities are of making the county ordinance the minimum that anyone would have, or that any jurisdiction would have, using a few measures. Minimum of 12 months to repay, making sure that commercial and mobile home tenants are protected, and making sure that someone who doesn't have documentary evidence of being laid off can self-certify. So if an ordinance doesn't have these things, eliminate it and replace it with the county. Um, so, I mean, we really thought that we had the vote 2 weeks ago. And at the last minute, we didn't have the votes and it got postponed to August 4th. We think we're going to get it on August 4th. But that means you all have to call your supervisor to say, please make, you have to push them ahead of time. Call their offices to tell them to make their law the floor and explain why your law is weaker. Or does Downey even have a law?
Yeah, it's a very weak law.
And why is it weaker?
Rodolfo or Kathy, can you talk a little bit more about your ordinance?
Yes, well, basically the ordinance says that when the state of emergency and it's over for City of Downey, tenants have 3 months to pay back.
You're the 3 months people.
Yes. And
so if all of you called your supervisor and said, there's no way for me to pay in 12 months, let alone 3 months, please make the county ordinance a floor. Who's your supervisor?
Janice.
Janice Han.
Oh, Janice Han. So she's been one of our, she comes on board, she goes, she comes on board, she goes, so call her. You need to push her. How many people are on this call? 27 people on this call. Can everybody promise to call her tomorrow at 9 o'clock?
Yes.
For sure. We're doing it.
Okay. So let's do it. Tomorrow at 9 o'clock, you all call her. Make the county law a floor. We only have 3 months. Right?
Yeah.
This is a no-brainer for her.
Please give us a phone number.
Okay, I can go online, and so to get a phone number, one of the things that so I'm 61 and not the most independent internet person on the planet.
I'll put it on there. Don't worry.
Oh, no, I got it. What the point I was going to make is that before COVID, if I needed to find Janice Han's number, I would have texted someone on my staff and gotten them to find it for me. But look how independent I am. I got you Janet Han's number. Isn't that beautiful? Awesome. There it is. Man, almost anything. You just ask it in normal language and it tells you. There you go. So I'm a rock star because I could get you Janet Han's number. That's great. You guys are a decent group. I walk in 46 minutes late and I'm still a rock star.
Rock star, yeah. Look at that.
So Jorge has been doing a great presentation, I hear. Is there anything else were you already like towards the end of it? Or why don't you finish it? Why don't you finish it?
Was pretty much, yeah, it was towards the end. I think that we were just, we didn't have to go over the LA City aspect, so it made it a lot shorter. But I think what I want to say and what I usually say is that the reason that a lot of these laws and these ordinances get passed is because the community rises up and demands it. We don't just ask for it, we have to demand it. And so as Elena had suggested, it's a simple phone call. I know it might be nerve-wracking or you might be scared if you've never done it before. But as Elena said, all you have to do is call and tell them that you want them to make the county ordinance the floor. That's it. That's all you got to do. You can leave it in a message. You might even talk to just a staff member. Very rarely are you going to talk with the actual supervisor anyway. But it's important that they continue to get these calls because even their staff will report to them and say, oh, we got 50 calls today demanding this. So it's really important that they hear from you.
Jorge, ring, ring, ring. I'm the caller. You're the staffer.
Okay.
Ring, ring, ring.
Yeah,
ring.
Office of Supervisor Janice Han.
Hi. My name's Elena. My name's Elena Pop, and I'm a constituent.
Great.
And I live in Downey, and
Okay.
I'm only going to have 3 months to pay back my rent after the crisis ends, and that's going to make me homeless. I can't do that. Can I want the supervisor to vote to make the county law the floor so that I'll have at least 12 months. Can you do that, please?
Okay, sure. I will be sure to let her know.
That's all they ever say back. So let's put that little speech in my name is, I am a constituent. I live in Downey. I have not been able to pay my rent because why? I will not be able to pay it in the 3 months the Downey law allows. Will the board, will Ms. Hahn please vote yes to make the county law the floor? Okay, so that's your speech. And then when you finish with that, can you do this one? This one's even more important, but do that one first. This one you're saying several million ton, actually, this is an email, okay? So you do an email, the subject is save rule 1, and just say, please save rule 1. I'm a tenant, I'm in Downey. I haven't been able to pay my rent. I'm going to be evicted. If my eviction starts on August 15th, I will be homeless. Or if you're not a tenant who can't pay their rent, people are writing very creative emails saying, when I go for a walk in my neighborhood, I see so many homeless encampments. We need, there's going to be so many more homeless people. So whatever you want to say, your message is save rule 1. And these are all the emails that you want to send it to. You can send one to all of them and then make calls, especially to the Judicial Council. I know a lot of people are doing this action. Did you explain rule 1 and you explain what happened on Friday, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so we really don't know what the Judicial Council is thinking, because all of a sudden they just said, we're planning on suspending it August 14th. Feels pretty definite, but they haven't voted yet. And rule 1 is so important. We normally would have seen 3,300 eviction cases in the county pre-COVID. We saw an average of 350 a month after rule 1 was passed. That's a reduction of 90%. We have to save rule 1. It is what's keeping us safe and at home. So if you can all, let's compose an email here. My name is, it's actually the same thing. Just tell them the same thing. My name is, I'm a constituent. I live in Downey. I haven't been able to pay my rent. Please save rule 1. Actually, let's just do it. My name is, I live in Downey. I have not been able to pay my rent because X. If you repeal rule 1, I will be in eviction proceedings and lose my home. Save rule 1.
Yeah, and you can do all of this in Spanish too. I mean, it doesn't have to be in English. If your primary language is Spanish, then I suggest that you do that in Spanish or whatever other language is comfortable to you.
So I'll put, the Spanish speakers can see the chat.
I think they do. If not, I'll just post it in Downey Tenants Union page.
I could put it in Spanish.
Okay, so I want to, yeah, and I mentioned to them, Elena, the Healthy LA Coalition, and wanted to, yeah, and have them consider maybe becoming a part of that coalition, since they are, because we also have a representative from, I guess, a more newer tenant union in Paramount. So the Paramount Tenant Union as well.
Wow, there's
So
tenant
I think,
unions everywhere.
yeah, we got to keep building.
You people are taking over the world.
Yeah, so there's all of these great coalitions that you can then get involved with. And even as on the state level, you can become a member of Tenants Together or Housing Now, and then get involved on the state level to find out what's going on with all of these new bills and new legislation that might help protect tenants. So these are some organizations, including EDN, which is where Elena Pop is from and what she helped found. But these are some legal resources that you can also reach out to if you have any other further questions. So I think that pretty much does it, unless anybody has, like, we can open it up and answer questions for folks if people have more questions. But that will cover kind of what's going on in the county and what's going on in the state and the things that you should really be aware of. This is more about like what the protections are because of COVID and during COVID. We can also schedule maybe next month, Kathy, we can schedule a Know Your Rights training.
Sure.
From like move in to move out, what you need to know.
Yeah,
right?
we can do that, definitely.
Yeah, because that goes into how to write letters, how to request for repairs, what to do about your security deposit, you know, all those other great topics.
Rodolfo, we had some questions based on the COVID-19 situation that is going on. Do you want to bring that up or?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Kathy. So, nada más para, so I think we've covered a lot of ground, but I think a lot of people have been coming in and out of the call. So I think, you know, a really important point, Jorge, if you could address, you know, what exactly should people do if they've been affected by the virus or feel that they've been affected? What are their rights, and if they can't pay the rent, what should they do?
Jorge,
Yes.
do you want to take that?
No, please. I was waiting for you.
Oh,
You're
okay.
the star. You're the rock star.
The rock stars a lot. It's been like quite a day today. So if somebody cannot pay their rent, they should send a letter to their landlord saying they can't pay the rent. The letter can be general. I can't pay my rent because of COVID-19. You don't really need to get very specific, like I can't pay the rent because I got sick, and now never tell your landlord that someone in your household is sick or that you are sick. We've had too many cases where the landlord has then told neighbors, and then the neighbors have gotten concerned, and then we have problems with the sick person went outside and touched the banister, and they, you know, so we don't want that kind of, you know, sort of hysterical reaction to people who are sick. We have samples. I'm going to put in the chat something called the COVID-19 Tenant Survival Guide. The survival guide actually links you to a lot of stuff, including all of the Tenants Together information on their website, including their survival guide. One of the things I like about the Tenants Together survival guide is that it gives you everything from what the law is to where to find online yoga. So take a look at their link because it has a lot of good information. And it is in English and in Spanish. So there it is in both languages. I'm gonna open it up. Oh, well, maybe I won't. Let's see, share screen. Should I teach people how to use it? Maybe let me share screen.
Sure, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Sure, let me stop share and then I'll pass on over privileges to you. And I apologize, everybody, but I personally may have to jump off, but I'm going to pass over privileges to Elena so that she can help answer any other questions.
So these are just some sample pages off the guide. That way I can show them in English and Spanish. So it starts off with a table of contents. And really, these are commonly asked questions. We wrote the guide off of the questions people were asking us. So an explanation of tenant harassment, where to get legal help, what kind of rental assistance is available. It has this link to workers' rights, immigrants' rights, and other government benefit resources for people. It has all these standalone sheets, what to do if you're being harassed for the rent, what to do if the landlord wants more information, what to do if you get a 3-day notice to pay rent or quit, what to do if you get a paper from the court, and then it tells you step by step. It has a section on what to do if you want stronger laws, although I think you guys are already doing that. And then it has these links to all the laws. The governor's done this, the Judicial Council, the LA Superior Court, unincorporated county. And then if you go onto this tracker right here, it takes you to the Tenants Together tracker that has all of the local jurisdictions, including yours. And then there's a sample letter. And this is, we have 2 in ours. This one's the nice one. I don't have the rent. If you have evidence, give it to them. And if you don't have evidence, don't bother. And then there's a harsher letter in ours that, for the landlord that you already told them nicely and they're still bugging you, there's a stronger, here's the law and back off kind of a tone to a letter. So take a look at that. If folks, I put all of my contact information in the chat. If you want to call about organizing, there's my text, that works best. You can email me. I am inundated with emails. I cannot figure out how to stay on top of it. So for an emergency, it's this. We have webinars, Tuesdays at 6, Thursdays at 5, and Saturdays at 1. This is 5 to 6, but today we had 26 people and all of them with real emergencies. It was crazy. But it's usually an hour. And then here we have, if you have an individual problem, you can send an email to askanattorney@edn.la or consulta@edn.la. Your subject line should say your name, your address, so we can look up what laws apply to you, and then why you are emailing. 3-day notice to pay rent or quit. Landlord is harassing me. Need general information. And then details in your email. If you have a digital divide, meaning you don't have internet or you don't have email, and if you don't know how to write, then you can call this number between 9 and 12, and someone will give you advice over the phone. We have a 24-hour immediate lockout hotline at this number. Okay. But that's really like the landlord's at the door and kicking you out right now. It's not they kicked me out last week, and it's not they're threatening to kick me out next week. What I'm not sure what we would do in Downey, but do you guys have a rapid response like the
Um,
LA Tenants Union does?
no, we do not have it because we haven't get into those cases in our area, but we are actually working with LA tenants for that as well.
Good. So, so I know that so I usually call ACE for anything in South LA or the different locals of the tenants of the LA Tenants Union. So it'd be very good if there were very, very neighborhood specific response teams. It doesn't work to have someone coming from the San Fernando Valley all the way to Downey. We need people there faster. So did that answer your question? So the person who can't pay the rent should send the letter and then wait and not sign anything and not be pressured and join your tenant union and come to any of these Zooms if they're being pressured so that we can keep figuring out what to do.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Elena. And yeah, so since we are going to get a lot more active, so it was mentioned by Jorge and by Elena. So we as the Downey Tenants Union, and I know that other tenants union also, we want to be doing this. We're going to be pressuring those county supervisors as much as possible because what we're hearing from Elena and Jorge is that, that vote is going to be important. And so please, as Elena said, please call Janice Hahn and whoever your supervisor is as soon as possible. We put the number there because we need that floor. Is that right, Elena?
You need the floor. You need at least 12 months. That's the most important thing now because we managed to get some of the other stuff that we needed in little bits and pieces. The way that I'm describing this is the pandemic ripped a wound and we're bleeding. And the Judicial Council comes along and says, oh my God, let's put a tourniquet on that, but they didn't clean the wound. And then the Board of Supervisors and the Downey City Council and all of these other city councils put 40 Band-Aids on top of it. And now the Judicial Council says, no more tourniquet. Then that's where we're at right now. So we need to really, really, really get them to say to not repeal it. So as long as I have you here, this is a draft of a letter that we're going to try to get out tomorrow that has a lot of statistics and why we need the rule. But if you guys could take a vote to sign on to this letter, that would be great. And Jorge, if you could get Tenants Together to sign on to this letter, we're going to try to get it out in the next day or so. This is a draft, but it's a good letter. You want me to put it on the chat? I mean, on the screen?
Please do.
So it says, the undersigned legal services programs and community-based organizations right to urge that the Judicial Council leave Emergency Rule 1 in place. It's been very effective. Our organizations help tenants. The Emergency Rule 1 is the only statewide baseline protection for tenants at this time. And we need you to leave it as written. Your announcement on your website sent shockwaves to the community. It's not very clear what you're planning to do. How do we make plans? That kind of tone. Rule 1 continues to be needed because we're still in a state of emergency. And to take it away from us, the line is, experts agree that the single most effective mechanism for preventing contagion is to shelter in place. How can we shelter in place if there's no place to shelter? And then we provided them the current statistics on how the numbers are going up, and also how Latinos and African Americans are more impacted based on percentage in the population. Someone else is going to fill in statewide statistics, but look at how crazy these numbers are. This is the year and this is the month. So in 2019, in January, 3,600, February, 3,200, March, 3,100, April, 3,100. So for a total of 40,572 evictions. And look at this difference. Just as soon as Rule 1 passes, our numbers are really more like 218 and 318. This includes the first 3 days in April. So it would, without the first 3 days in April, it would be significantly lower. So it's amazing what an impact it had. So it talks about how as soon as Rule 1 lifts, 365,000 families are at risk. That includes 757,000 children. So it talks about the work that the Right to Counsel Coalition is going to do. If you give us Rule 1 and we get AB 1436, we use those 12 months to help people negotiate pay and stay agreements. And how the Right to Counsel Coalition is working to increase our caseload from 5,000 to 30,000, which would really solve the problem. And then it talks about how the county has always had a terrible access to justice gap. In 2002, 73,000 evictions filed, 1,300 represented. That's not for every 100 people that walked into a legal aid office, 98 were turned away. We had improved it to 88%, and COVID is going to decimate that improvement. But if you give us time to gear up, then we don't lose ground and we can continue doing a better and better job at representing people. And then more statistics about how the horrible tsunami and what the Right to Counsel Coalition is doing, what the Access L.A. Coalition is doing. The Access L.A. Coalition is going to take that 12-month period and train people how to negotiate deals for their own members. So you guys will train 5 of your people how to do it yourself, and then we'll provide you supervision, training, and the insurance to do it well. So if you guys can sign on to this letter, that would be great. Oops.
Yeah, it's a great letter.
What's your voting process like? How do you decide something like this?
I think we'll have to have a meeting after this. Is that right, Catherine?
Yes, absolutely.
So, but thank you for bringing it to our. So you're trying to launch it tomorrow, Elena?
Well, so every day we don't know when they're going to vote, and so the sooner we do it, the better. But we need enough signatures on it before we launch it. Part of what we're thinking of doing it is just sending it with 3 or 4 signatures, and then in a week sending a whole bunch more. So you guys do your process and then let me know.
Wonderful. Okay, so it feels like we're close to wrapping up the meeting, but maybe are there any people that want to have a question or want to make a comment about anything we've discussed?
Yes, I do.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Irina.
Yes. Thank you. First of all, thank you for all this meeting. And then one thing I kind of recognize that not so many people know about tenant union existing. So I think we all should maybe talk out or post it on the Facebook more or Instagram to collect more people. So that way, if we write the letter or anything we make a move, it's gonna be, I think, more power to work on. So I know that.
Absolutely, yes. We're gonna have to do that. Thank you. Thank you, Irina. So yeah, let's talk after. So Gabriel, did you want to say something?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, well, everyone. My name is Gabriel Ramirez. I'm from El Monte. I'm also, I will be pushing my county board supervisor, hashtag not my supervisor, Hilo Solis, to push a actual, repeal of that law of, making the county as a law. So, and I also will be working with El Monte Union tenants because, as you all know, majority El Monte hasn't been pushing enough of the rent control, and so I'll be, lending hand to do my part to push my supervisor Solis. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. So what you want to tell her is make the LA County law the base. LA County, the floor, the minimum.
You got it.
Thank you. So you're also with the El Monte Tenants Union?
I'm actually, yes, I am, and I will be pushing it as well and gathering up other El Monte tenants, so that way to get the support as well, so we can actually come together as well and push her, to do this, because she's, according to her, she's all for rent control, but it's pretty much her policies is very very poor.
Yeah, Elena.
Yeah, she's mine too, and I've been a little disappointed in her. Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, so we just have a question in the chat. So it looks like, so it's my understanding that this letter you're talking about is so that organizations can sign on to it.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Is
Yeah,
there?
so as the individuals, you guys can do what the action alert I put in the chat, but
Okay.
this is like you can't really ask individuals to absorb all those statistics. But as an organization, if you can, how can I share this letter to obtain more signature? So what I would like is, MV, can you put your email on the chat, and then I will send it to you. So individuals should send the little, just the little support, just this little bit here, okay? But organizations should sign on to the letter.
Got it. Okay.
And the person who was speaking, how do we get connected to the El Monte Tenants Union? So that we have a new coalition called the Northeast L.A. Coalition. And it's all the tenant unions that feed into the Pasadena and West Covina courts. And that includes El Monte. So if we can get them connected, that would be great. So who was connected with El Monte?
Gabriel, are you available to talk?
Yes, I can. Yes, you can find us on our Facebook page, El Monte Tenants Union. We have that, and just send us a message, and then we can get back to you, and we can collaborate and see what we can do. Work together, work with other tenant unions.
Okay.
And another lady that for El Monte will be Irma. So yeah, we can get you her contact information for sure, Elena.
Great, that'd be great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The next meeting of the Northeast LA Coalition is on May. May. What am I talking about? Estamos en agosto. August 6th. Is it August 6th? It's on August 6th. I'm 99.9% sure. But I can't remember if it must be at 7. August 6th at 7. Okay.
Okay, great. So are there any other lingering questions from anyone? ¿Alguien quiere preguntar algo?
Hi, this is Alfredo with the Paramount Tenants Union. Thank you, Elena, for coming on. Thank you for all the information. Thank you, Jorge. So much good stuff. Going back to the letter the letter template that you were speaking about. So what happens if somebody didn't or failed to go ahead and give proper notice after the 7 days that was recommended? Can they still do something about it, or what is the procedure for them after that with fighting for their home?
Okay, so the 7-day requirement initially was just the governor. So the governor issued an order on March 27th that everybody called a moratorium. He called it a moratorium. The media called it a moratorium. It didn't even say you can't file an eviction. What it said is if you file an eviction and the tenant told you that they couldn't pay the rent because of COVID, within 7 days of the due date, the tenant has 55 days and 60 days instead of 5 days to file their answer in court. Okay? So that's the only thing you've lost if you didn't do that 7-day letter. I don't know if Downey requires you to write a letter, but if it does, that's all the more reason to get the base to be the county, because the county asks you to write a letter, but also says, but if you couldn't do it, it's okay. Right?
Excellent.
So
And
I'm
so in
not
that,
so worried about those letters, but people should do the letters now. If you're not going to pay your August rent, you should write a letter. If you haven't paid your rent, you should write your letter now. Whether you have to or not, you should just do it.
right. So Jorge also mentioned the possibility of many cities having been worst off due to the fact that their cities do have emergency ordinances. So if we manage to get the county base to be or the county ordinance to be the base, how do we, or what exactly do you recommend we push for further to further improve that at a local level?
If we manage it to be the base, then I'm sorry, I'm not following.
Right. So if we, or I guess even if we don't manage it to be the base, like what more can say Downey push for in order to make it even better than the floor, than the base? And
let me what I think you should be working on is for the supervisors, you want county to be the floor. For rule 1, for the judicial council, the message is save rule 1. But the thing that's even better than the county being the floor is AB 1436. So you should be, for the state legislature, we need AB 1436. Who for Downey, who is your state assembly person?
Cristina Garcia.
And how about so there's more than Downey here though, right?
Right, it's Rendon for Paramount.
Okay, Rendon. Who else?
And in El Monte, it's
Chao.
Chao. Like that, Chao? CHAO?
Yes, and just letting you know, clarification, in El Monte, there's 2 assemblies. I'm more on the 49th, and more like in North El Monte, it's Blanca Rubio. That's on the AD 48.
So are you guys interested in getting on legislative visits with them? So like, for instance, today we did a legislative visit with, we did 2 today. No, we did 1 today. Portantino was today, and yesterday we did 3. And we got 3 staffers to say that they would recommend to their bosses a yes vote. And today was terrible. He was like not budging at all. but so that now he's going to be the recipient of many friendly calls from his constituents until we get him to yes.
That's definitely, and Lena, I think we would be up for it, and that was going to be my follow-up questions: what to do about SB 1436, 6515, Ilhan Omar's bill, and the rest that Jorge was able to mention. So
Let me share screen again. And so I'm not sure if Jorge showed you guys this slide. So the way to get involved in the county stuff is here at the County Advocacy Committee to get your, so you join healthyla.org and has to be on the County Advocacy Committee. If you care about the Omar bill, you can be on the Federal Advocacy Committee. There's right now 4 federal bills that don't seem to be going anywhere. If you want the banks to take responsibility for the problem, there's a banks committee. And then this is for City of LA. So there's 3 committees you can get involved here. And then you can get involved with Tenants Together on the state stuff since you're already working with Jorge. Housing Now is also very active on the state stuff, but I mean, if you want to be in both organizations, that's great. But I think if you're already working with Tenants Together, I think that works fine. If you guys want to be involved in the legislative visits, then anyone who wants to go on a legislative visit, here, put me your name, your email in the chat, your name, your email, your phone number. If you know your assembly member and your senator, so name, email, phone, assembly, and senator, put them here. And if you don't know, then just put your address and I'll look it up. And then we'll hook you up with the person who's setting up the visits. And so when we get the visit, we send you an email. If you can make it, great. And if you can't make it, then we have enough people that it doesn't matter, right? So.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you for inviting us to that. I think that's a great experience that we.
And some of you are putting it privately, that's fine. And in fact, if you put it privately, it all stays together. As opposed to when you put it on for everyone, you intermix each other. So if you want to just put it in the chat, that's great. I've got 4 people already that have done it. 5 people now. And you guys actually follow instructions. Like your name, email address, and the name of your electeds. That's great. Okay.
Wonderful. Yeah, so, okay, so are there other people that want to just ask a question or make a comment? Last comments?
I have a question. I don't know if Jorge is still on the line. He mentioned a coalition. I missed the name of it. The Coalition of Policy Advocates.
It's this one right here. It's called, come on. It's called the Healthy LA Coalition. And it, where is it? So it's the Healthy LA Coalition. It's a coalition of 375 organizations. So you'd bring us to 376. You can join the Housing Stability Group that has 3 subcommittees, one on tenant protections, one on mortgages, and one on how to convert our housing from private control to public control. Then unhoused worker protections, small businesses, and protections for the incarcerated. So you would probably mainly want to be in this committee. And then it has, so this committee develops policy, and these committees do the lobbying. So there's one on federal advocacy, one on banks. This is the City of LA, so you don't want to be on that one. But this is the county advocacy. Or if you're good, if you're the kind of person that could take a 28-page paper and turn it into 5 hashtags, you want to be in comms. So it's called Healthy LA. You join by just signing on at healthyla.org and saying which committee you want to be on.
Excellent, thank you. And lastly, with the nuisance condition for evictions, is there some sort of a minimum criteria or like some sort of requirements that this is judged on?
So let me just give you examples of cases that have gone forward and the other side has not been successful. They tried to get a family kicked out because they had an inoperable vehicle that had been cited and they had refused to move it. The judge said, oh, hell's no. They tried to get a family evicted because they refused to cooperate with fumigation, and the landlord argued that that was causing a spread of the roaches. The judge said, oh, hell's no. They tried to get a family evicted for refusing access on an inspection. The judge says no. They tried to get a family. So far, we've mainly gotten no's. And people don't get evicted when it happens. It just means the summons is issued and the case starts. So it's not like it's the death knell. It just means that the case starts earlier than it would if the summons were not issued. So remember, the summons is a piece of paper that gives the court jurisdiction over the tenant. That means power. Without the summons, no power. Without the summons, no trial. Without the summons, they can't evict you unless you run to court and file an answer. So while there's rule 1, we don't file answers. And so those are the cases we've had, and we haven't lost any. And I don't think I've heard of anybody where that has lost a case. I mean, there might be tenants so there might be a tenant or more out there that there was one of these cases against them and they didn't have a lawyer and then they lost because they didn't have a lawyer. But the Right to Counsel Coalition is 10 legal services providers and 12 organizations that do organizing. And our coalition has not lost a single one of those trying to get people out for nuisance.
Thank you, Elena.
Jazz, that's so cute. I love this she, her thing. That's really cute.
Oh, thank you. Given that opportunity, I got a question for you. I do belong to Dolices area, and the thing is, it's a fairly conservative community. I'd say the people that are involved are more so interested in things that really not necessarily benefit the community, but more so benefit those at stake, that is, those representing the community. Any advice that you might have for residents that are already in the movement? They're primarily Spanish speaking, with that said, but any advice that you might have specifically for a community that's not as civically engaged, because we come with a lot of privilege, you know, we have some savvy when it comes down to politics and such, but for a community that has unfortunately not been included in the civic work, any suggestions that you might have when it comes down to bringing in such community?
And what is the community that you're talking about?
I'm from Southeast L.A., the unincorporated area of Huntington Park, which is Walnut Park.
Okay.
So the thing is, it seems they're all well aware that there's a problem, but it's difficult to navigate the system as it is because it's the county. It's not necessarily like you could go, right?
Yeah. So there is a county-wide tenant association of tenants in unincorporated county. Mm-hmm. And that's a coalition that got us the rent control law for unincorporated county. And that's a place to find some connection, but it becomes, the geography then becomes complicated because, you know, Avalon is part of that coalition too, right? On Catalina Island. What does Avalon have in common with the area around Huntington Park? what I think, what we, evictions are court-based, right? So what we did in the Northeast L.A. part of the county, we put 2 courts together, Pasadena and West Covina, and all the communities that feed into those 2 courts, we formed something called NELAC, the Northeast LA Coalition. Most of these communities that have been named off, every time somebody said I'm from, I figured out where you go, and most of you feed into Compton or Norwalk Court. With the exception of El Monte. El Monte feeds into NELAC. So the El Monte people should probably join that coalition because you have more in common with that coalition. Let me figure out Huntington Park. But what you're talking about is how do we get members of that community to get involved, or how we make a tenants union in that community?
Yes, simply because a lot of them, or most of them that have concerns at this time, are undocumented or have a partner that's undocumented. So it becomes a problem, right, for them to even address a concern per se. They'll share it with me, but unfortunately, we have a lot of problems also with police. But in addition to that, I mean, just having a simple question as to how do you address a concern in your apartment has become problematic.
Yeah. So some of that just has to be Huntington Park. Some of that has to be, so you guys are also Norwalk. So I think you're in the right family here. I think you need to find support from more established tenant unions and maybe from Jorge helping you build a tenant union in Huntington Park. And you're also talking Huntington Park and Southeast LA?
Yes.
I think. Jorge, what do you think? Are you still with us?
Elena, he had to step out, so we can actually help her, and as well, I believe I will talk to George.
So you guys call him George too?
Yes, I do.
Because I told him, I know there's people that call you George. I've heard it. He goes, no, Jorge. Okay, good. So, so Jazz, it sounds like you have an offer of help from Catherine to help you going. And, you know, people who are undocumented, you know, LA County does not elect an elected official without undocumented people. You want to know why? Because you cannot get elected in LA County if you don't have the endorsement of the County Federation of Labor. And the foot soldiers for the County Federation of Labor are the hotel workers, the janitors. So being undocumented, I'm not saying it's not an issue, but I'm saying there's still a lot of power to be had there. And so it's a question of getting people to get over their fears and move forward. I'm trying to also answer you in the chat. People are messaging me privately too. So anything else people want to talk about?
I think it's time to wrap it up. Thank you, Elena, for giving us so much information. I think a lot of people got a new ideas and a lot of new info.
Yes, thank you so much, Elena. Thank you so much. And
you are very understanding. I'm so sorry it was so late. I'm trying to get people to hurry up, but people in crisis, you can't make them go faster. And if you make them go faster, they get more anxious, so they slow down more. So lo tenía que tomar con calma. Give me 1 second to get this answer in the chat so that somebody wants to know how to join the Northeast Alliance. And I want to give them the email address.
great. Just while you do that, so everyone, we will, as Downey Tenants, we are going to definitely be doing a campaign for getting Janice Hahn, our supervisor, but also Hilda Solis, because it's all related, and all the rest of them, they all need to sign on so that we can all have the protections that currently a lot of cities, including Downey, do not enjoy, since our ordinances are not strong enough. So please be on the lookout for that. And I know that's going to happen also in El Monte, so it's going to be great. And Paramount, I'm sure. So let's keep going.
And Huntington Park for
And Huntington Park now, yes.
And Whittier. Oh, Whittier.
There we go, yes.
Okay.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much, Elena.
You're
Thank
very
you so much
welcome.
to everyone.
Let me know if you want me to come back, okay?
Oh, yes, of course. You're more than welcome to come back every day if you need it.
How often do you meet?
Say it again.
How often do you meet?
Tenants Union every month, but with you and George in there, it's the first time.
Okay, well, you just let me know, okay?
Sounds good.
You just let me know.
All right.
All righty.
Thank you, Elena.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a
Bye.
good evening.
Bye. Take care. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the ASL.